Abhinav, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to talk to you today. I want to start here. You've been building Postman for well over a decade now. Can you give us the flyover? What is Postman today, and how is it changing in the AI era?
Thanks for having me here, Peter. First of all, great to be here. So, for the first decade of Postman, we've been primarily building for developers. Our mission is to help them build APIs faster. Today, we have more than 40 million developers across more than 500,000 companies using the product, hundreds of thousands of customers. And we really are the place where APIs are built today for the entire world. And when we look at the next decade, it's really about building for developers and building for agents. So the way we look at the product going forward is really divided into two categories. One is agents and AI in Postman, and the second part is what can Postman do for AI. So over the last year, we have been shipping at a blazing pace, at the pace of AI. We don't have long-term roadmaps anymore. We are just thinking and shipping. It's a great time to be building developer tools. So we shipped a major version of the platform earlier this month. You have AI natively integrated through agent mode in Postman that can do short tasks or long-running tasks. For anything that you can do in Postman as a human, you could do with the agent today. We have re-architected the platform to be agent native. Everything can be done through the CLI as well. So you can plug it into coding agents like Cursor and Claude. And really for large organizations, we have the Postman API catalog today that can serve as a system of record and as a context layer for the hundreds of thousands of services that an organization is running, which is still a massive, massive unsolved problem. So that's AI in Postman. And when we look at Postman for AI, we're shipping new capabilities, especially around MCP. So we have MCP tooling available in Postman. We have an MCP catalog, and we're going to be shipping an MCP gateway pretty soon. And we are looking at how we can make agents more effective when they're in the development phase. A big idea that we are going to have soon is the idea of simulations. So how can agents, before they come into the real world, really know the APIs and the outside world that they're going to be interacting with? And finally, we have Astro that we have introduced as a control plane for production-grade agents that the company is working on.
So I want to cover, there's a lot of product surface area that I want to cover, but we talked about this backstage, and just on a personal note, I'd love to get your perspective. What is it like to be a CEO in 2026 of a developer tools company? I'll feed you a breadcrumb. We were talking about the fact that you're writing code again.
Yeah.
And what it means to reorganize your organization. Can you speak to sort of the CEO experience of a scaled out developer tools company?
Yeah, you go through different phases, I guess. First you realize that the existing org chart has to be killed. If you are operating through an org chart that is built in the pre-AI world, you're going to be slow. I think the modern org chart, and I would say I would qualify myself as a builder CEO, is really having a very wide span of control, even within your exec team, but you're primarily working with ICs. So at Postman, we say either you're building or you're selling, and the building is done by engineers or developers. So we had the trinity of product managers, designers, engineers before. Now every role is horizontal. Projects are led by staff engineers or principal engineers who have high agency. They can see across the board and deep in the stack. And they really work next to me. We get together, we see what is the biggest idea, what is the biggest problem we can attack, and we just go for it. A big change has happened on the product management and the design side of it. We have product managers who are writing docs. We had Parag Agrawal, I think, prior to this, and I was telling him that we kind of got rid of PRDs actually just last year. Product managers are building APIs, they're connecting to agent mode and Postman and seeing, okay, how far can we push a capability? And I think for a moment, there was a crisis within the design team at Postman, okay, if this is happening, what do we do? And I think what's happened is that design itself has become more nimble. Our designers are shipping PRs through Cursor or Claude directly. Instead of using Figma alone, they're prototyping in Claude, and they just communicate with the engineer directly. So everybody is basically building. And I think what it has forced the management team, including me, is to figure out what does good judgment look like. When you can build a lot, and I have a bunch of agents running around doing research on our customers internally. I have Claude doing deep research. Whenever I park a car with my kid is like, coming, I'm just running like a deep research prompt in Claude. So like you're judging, and you have to be much more aware of what's going on with your customers, what's happening in the product. And that's a big change. We don't have quarters-long roadmaps anymore. And it's been fantastic with customers as well, by the way. Some of our customers who are really understanding the pace of AI, earlier we would go and show them a slide deck. Now the next time we meet them, we show them the product. So that's how we are operating today.
I want to talk product, but before we make that transition, what is your you sort of alluded to this. What is your agent staff?
So I have an agent for almost every function at Postman. I would leave the coding agents for our engineers. We let them pick the tools they have. But for all product functions, we have a couple of agents that aggregate like every single thing that customers tell us. It's embedded in Slack. So instead of like having a team of product managers or a head of product, I just ask the agent like, if we built something last month, what did customers say, and what should I build next? So for the whole product lifecycle, we have these agents. And I think we'll talk about Astro in a second, but for all aspects of the go-to-market lifecycle, we have agents from qualifying customers, selling, augmenting them with customer information. So it's just like agents across the board.
Fascinating. All right, let's talk MCP. Can you talk a little bit about what Postman is building to help users get the most out of MCP?
So we are very bullish on MCP. I think it's a fantastic protocol to really connect agents to the outside world. And when it came about, we basically decided to ship MCP support for Postman in a single week. It was I think Wednesday or Thursday, I remember, and like our launch date was the next week. And at its very core, Postman allows you to inspect responses, document them, test them, and that full stack of capabilities was available since last year. We added MCP server generation on Postman, so we have 100,000 APIs on the Postman public network, and you can convert any of them to an MCP server. We have published an MCP catalog, so you can aggregate your MCP servers that you're building on Postman or inside your organization and connect them to the catalog. And what our customers started asking us about was we have so many MCP servers now that how do we enforce governance, how do we enforce security, and that's where the protocol was still evolving. And now I think it's kind of there, so we'll be launching an MCP gateway pretty soon.
What is your impression of the protocol right now? I feel like there was this honeymoon phase where everybody was really excited about MCP, and then you had a bunch of naysayers on Twitter complaining about security and all other kinds of things. Are you bullish on the protocol? Obviously, you're making a lot of investments here. If I could just sort of shoehorn one other question in here, I'm curious, like, what is your general impression of skills? Is that going to be complementary, or is that going to be competitive to MCP?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing about web protocols or protocols in general, and I've studied this evolution over the last like 20, 25 years, is protocols that win are the ones that eventually have wide consumer adoption. So if Claude supports it and OpenAI followed through and every agent has MCP support, you have to build an MCP server. It's kind of a no-brainer. And if you go back to the early eras of the web, HTTP was the protocol for websites. It did not have security built in, and people were very happy with HTTP. In fact, when people started building APIs on HTTP, a lot of the technical experts were like, this is the totally wrong way to build it. We should use something else. So you always have this division between people who want speed and people who want correctness, and eventually it settles down in the middle. And that's where I think MCP was. Like, I think the beautiful thing with MCP was that people could just, instead of seeing Claude do things that Claude knew, now it could do things that you knew or your business knew. And that is a magic moment that everybody experienced and started building MCPs around it. I think now the protocol is in a governance body. I think there's a big open source community around it. And there's going to be more and more technology to help with the issues around security and governance. So every customer that we talk to is building MCPs today, whether it's internally or externally. So you kind of have to. And I think new protocols are going to emerge, but I feel MCP is here to stay.
We are approaching a world where I think most people in this room believe that agents are going to be the primary consumers of APIs. If you are, in terms of like how you talk to your customers and your perspective, like how do you think API design is going to change?
Yeah, I think over the last month, especially on Twitter, we have seen that everything has to be API first, and that's been like our belief since day one. Every platform shift has necessitated more and more APIs. So Postman was born when mobile and cloud were emerging, and that's where people suddenly they were like, oh, I have a website, and now I need to build APIs for my iPhone app or my Android app. And I think we're seeing that with agents today. The fascinating thing with AI that I see is that it, unlike kind of with the iPhone or with Android, which was just like two companies defining what the experience could be like, with agents, every company is building agents, and there are going to be many, many different form factors. We have conversational agents, we have autonomous agents, we have cloud agents, and each of them necessitate different patterns. So a few that I'm noticing are really built around what type of context you want to give to agents today. And I think I see that evolution happening quite quickly. Like people started with existing APIs. They're like, oh, I have an API that I can plug into an agent and get some output done. But now when they really start thinking about the user experience where they're going to be deploying these agents, they want to constrain it a little bit. They want to make it more effective over time. So context is a big, big area for API design today. I think the second idea is like security. A lot of agents that we have been impressed by are around researching or gathering information and condensing information. But we are still very early in action-oriented agents, where agents are acting on those APIs. And this is just a much harder problem, kind of like a self-driving car, right? Like when the car is actually driving, you need to make sure that a lot of other precautions are taken care of. I think the third thing that I'm very excited about, and I'm seeing early signs, and even at Postman, people are very excited about building, is agent identity and agent delegation. So when we really treat agents as coworkers or partners, not as as a substitute for Abhinav or Peter, then I'm really delegating an agent to do things. And API design work is very nascent there. Like what API tokens does the agent have access to? What does rollback look like? If the agent commits a mistake, is the agent's fault or is it your fault? So there are lots of interesting design problems there with APIs.
Fascinating. I want to talk about Fern. So this is an acquisition that you announced earlier this year. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of how that came together and how it reflects the broader platform strategy?
Yeah, so with Postman, we now cover the entire breadth and depth of the API lifecycle from dev to prod for a small team as well as a large company. So if you're building APIs of any shape or form, you can do that with Postman, the product. And where we saw customers asking for more was really around dev portals and SDKs. And we saw that they're actually growing in popularity, especially with agents becoming a consumer of APIs. So I'd known the Fern team for a long time. They had built a fantastic experience. And what I liked about them was they had an enterprise class product from kind of day one. They had fantastic customers like Twilio and Square. And we said, OK, let's see what we could do together and really augment the platform. Over the last few months, they've also been shipping a lot of stuff around agents, like making sure agents can read documentation better, agents can understand what the company is pushing. So there's a lot of synergy between what people are doing inside Postman and what companies want to do with Fern. So we thought it could be a good complementary purchase.
There's an API lifecycle, and it feels like with Fern, you have captured yet another adjacent part of it. I mean, does that sort of go into the thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we want customers to be on the Postman platform. If you're doing anything with APIs, just use Postman. Use us in dev, test. It doesn't matter where you start, but we just want customers to associate Postman as being synonymous with APIs.
See, you have been, you're a staple of developer productivity for folks working with APIs. You're used by, I don't know if I can say the number, but millions of most developers in the world have used Postman. You have recently made the transition to working around what I would call a new primitive, which are agents. Was that like, did that feel like adventurous? You've just been working on APIs for so long to now focus on this new primitive. Can you talk a little bit about what the mindset looked like in the company?
Yeah.
Because what I want to talk about is Agent Builder and Astro.
Absolutely, yeah. So we started seeing that a lot of developers in Postman were building agents like very, very early on, even before it became a common term. So if you go back a little bit to 2023, 24, people are getting their hands on APIs. They're trying to fit these AI APIs from OpenAI and specifically OpenAI. And people are trying to figure out like what does the form factor hold, when we look at the age of AI. And I think chatbots were just like the beginning. So I think people are experimenting there, but what we saw kind of happening in the community was that people are settling on the new form factor of what I would call the iPhone apps of this decade is an agent. So we built a product internally on Postman, but the problem with the product was that people are building agents for Postman use cases, and our ambition was broader. So we took the learnings from that product out, and we started from a fresh slate. We looked at, okay, if we were to build a new company today and we were to build a new foundation for it, what would that product hold? And that's how like Astro kind of came to be. We took kind of the control plane that we had built internally, but augmented it with much more dev-centric tooling. We looked at what is the state of open source models today, what are the places where people actually get stuck when they're actually running production grade agents, how do you keep information up to date, how do you guardrail API calls, all of that actually went into building Astro. And I think it was, like any new venture, it was pretty scary to people, right? Like, why are we doing it? Is it going to succeed or not? How does it fit in with the existing strategy? And I have a fantastic person, leading this, and we just decided, okay, if this is, what the future of software is going to be, so then we just have to go do it. If you stick with like business plans and long-term strategy docs, it doesn't kind of work. So, we just got back into developer mode and said, okay, what is the tooling that we wish we would have to run these agents? And that's how this came to be.
So what is Astro? Can you talk about what the core problems are that Astro is solving?
Yeah, so we define Astro as a production-grade control plane for agents. So when you're running these agents with real workloads, when they're business critical, whether they're doing workflow automation or doing research, you need a place for these agents to live. And what currently is happening today is people are building these agents piecemeal, whether they are internal agents or tied to your product, and they're all over the place. Nobody has a sense of what is the agent lifecycle like, what kind of controls I have put on these agents. So just think of like these unregistered employees running around in your organization. And what we've really built the experience around is that, of course, building is one part of it, but as someone who is hiring these agents, you go and literally like hire an agent. You measure its productivity. You see whether it's actually doing the job that you asked it to do. And if it's not doing the job, you can fire that agent as well. So you'll see that in the experience. They'll come with like ID cards when you bring them in. And really at Postman, we are running them for kind of our entire go-to-market function, our product function, and soon our engineering function. So it covers a whole bunch of different use cases, like managing them, hiring, firing. Data ingestion was a big issue when you can, of course, for calling APIs to do tasks, you need MCPs and other things which are embedded. But a big part of like building these agents was what kind of knowledge access it has. What do you want the agent to not do? So we've kind of built that as first-class primitives in the product. And then finally, like dev tooling to help you go from like just a framework, and there are a lot of frameworks out there, to production is all built in Astro. The analogy we give is like, what Kubernetes did to containers is what Astro does for agents.
Can you talk a little bit about the motivation for Astro? I mean, as we actually talked about earlier, it sounds like you have a whole fleet of agents that are working inside of Postman. Did this originate out of your experiences? Maybe just talk about where Astro came from.
So, when we founded the company, actually it goes back to founding the company as well. one of the things we wanted in the world with Postman was just net new developers. We talked about 100 million developers constantly, and the belief with Postman was that once you have fantastic APIs that are available to developers at scale, they'll innovate in new fundamental ways that we had not thought of. So we were in this journey, and when agents became really the form factor that we knew developers are going to build, we jumped in. So it was kind of a continuation of the theme of founding the company, and like APIs and AI came together to really building Astro. And we saw that there's a gap in the market as well when we go to and ask them, like, you're doing a lot of experimentation with MCP, you're trying out a lot of stuff, like tell me how many things are you actually running in production in mission critical workflows, and they highlighted like very few.
How do you drive adoption for Astro? Is it tightly coupled with Agent Builder, or is it relatively agnostic of where the agents or how the agents are being built?
Yeah, we'd love participation from the community. We've started open sourcing the spec, and we'll open source the runtime. We'll open source, I think, a lot of components for it. I think we intend to monetize on the enterprise side. We have everything, I think there will actually be something new shipping every week. Let me put it that way. So the dev tooling shipped last week. We'll have something new out this week. And we are seeing a lot of interest from existing Postman customers, but also from lots of net new developers. So it's kind of really building, like the way we build Postman with the community, and then just driving it, in this case, with open source.
This is I think a major theme today is the anticipation of agent users. Can you talk about, right now Postman serves primarily developers. Can you talk about how you are preparing for the emergence of not just agent users, but really agent customers?
Yeah, it's a fascinating area, and I would say that it also makes you a little bit uncomfortable when you've had a company for a while. I think at Postman, I and the rest of the company have just embraced it. I think there are going to be billions, if not trillions, of agents out there. And I think it really lowers the barrier for technology, whether you're developing software or you're using software in many, many ways. So there are a few things I would qualify. So I think software engineering is always going to be there, to build real systems, to build things that are performant, scalable, correct, whether you're building LLMs or you're building deterministic software, requires real engineering. And we believe that the platform that we have built is for systems engineering, for APIs and services at scale. That's not going to go away. But when we look at agents as the primary consumers of development tools or APIs, I think we had to imagine that, okay, let's really just not think of us as the UI layer at all. Like, what would we eliminate today if we were founding the company for building those agents? So we have to get rid of our preconceptions of our existing tooling. We have to look at okay, if people were doing this one task today, can an agent do it 10,000 times? Can it do 1,000,000 times? So we are at Daytona, so we are exploring sandboxes, for example, right? Like, how can we use sandboxes to let the agent do something that took a lot of time for humans to get trained on? And really where the rest of the stuff that we have built comes in is human review, verification, and correctness that people have always done with Postman. So I think with Postman being the system of record for APIs, it actually helps us bring that context to agents, helps them be more efficient, be more productive. And I think if we have done our job right, then those agents are going to pick us.
This is my last question before we run out of time, but I want to talk about the future. And I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to ask you what the roadmap is. I'm going to ask you a slight variation, which is, what are you most excited to build?
I think the interesting idea that I have been working with the team on is really this idea of simulations. Like, how do you create a digital replica of your entire system that you have built? And so before, what you're constantly seeing, where these agents kind of fail, is that everything looks good in dev. The moment you kind of hit production, you have issues. And we have that context to really give those agents a training ground for the entirety of your system stack. So we're calling it simulations. nothing too complicated there. But just imagine that you have these digital worlds ready for your agents to go in, and then you can tune those worlds to your liking. So that's like a futuristic, like sci-fi idea for me. As these agents are coming up, they need all this stuff, and we think we can do it. That's what I'm most excited about.
Applied intuition for agents.
Yep.
Awesome. Let's end it there. Amazing. Abhinav, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much.